How to turn the fans on? All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Bad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad of Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Bad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad of Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Page 591. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 15th day of September 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're beginning a new chapter, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, chapter 15, page 591. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Udvamulam Adakshakam Ashvattam Prahuravvyayam Changdangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Udvamulamadaksakam Ashvattam Prahuravvyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Udvamulamadaksakam Ashvattam Prahuravvyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Urdhvamulam Dakshakam Ashvatam Prahur Abhyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Urdhvamulam Dakshakam Ashvatam Prahur Abhyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Kunja Bihari, you want to try? Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Urdhvamulam Dakshakam Ashvatam Prahur Abhyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Michelle? Okay, all right. I'll read the synonyms. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Urdhva Moolam, with roots above, Adak, downwards, Shakam, branches, Ashvatam, a banyan tree, Prahu is said, Abhyayam, eternal, Chandangsi, the Vedic hymns, Yasya, of which, Parnani, the leaves, Yaha, anyone who, Tam, that Veda knows, Saha, he, Vedavit, the knower of the Vedas. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Purport. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns, meant for elevating oneself, are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. The process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. This is a misprint here. And up through the 14th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know that know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the 3 gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dashendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. The Prakriti is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself, and that is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is a wonderful and concise chapter, 20 verses, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottama. And Krishna begins with this wonderful analogy of this material world as a reflected tree. And he'll describe it. First his roots are upward and the branches are downward. And he describes how the fruits on this tree are the objects of sense gratification. And if we have no clue about how this tree is situated, we don't understand it, we simply go from one branch to another. We never actually get out of the entanglement of the material world. And the problem with the material world is that, just like a reflection, it's very tenuous. Our position, any position we have in this world, is very tenuous. It's based on the body, and the body is this very delicate machine. We can see how many people really thought about, on a regular basis every day, breathing. You just breathe. It's just there. It's like fish. They have no idea what water is. It's all around. It's just where we live. But we've been thinking about it a lot over the last year and a half, because it's not a given, right? It can be easily stopped. And anything, this body is such a delicate, fragile machine, and inevitably by the course of time and because of the nature of the material world, the balance of everything that has to happen in order for the body to work breaks down, and you die. And whatever attachments you've developed, and that's really what life is all about, really, is it building attachments and then seeing them change, right? I remember when I was growing up and I had a certain number of best friends. You know, I grew up in a suburb of New York, and I remember their names to this day, but I won't burden you with those names. And you know, this was my life. These are my friends, and then suddenly one of them moved away, another one moved away. What happened to my world? No longer can I play with so and so and so and so. Yeah, and that's just a child, and then gradually you grow up and you get more attachments, and they also get broken. And eventually, the thing that you're most attached to, the body itself, is taken away from you. I always like to refer to this verse by Prahlad Maharaj. He's one of our great acharyas. In fact, he's one of the 12 Mahajans, great persons, who they don't enunciate or create Dharma, but they purely transmit the Dharma that the Lord speaks. In other words, they are repositories of the knowledge that we're learning today. So Prahlad Maharaj is one of them, and it's a long story. His wonderful pastimes are told in the 7th canto, and one of those chapters, he's praying to this amazing manifestation of Krishna called Nrsingadev, half man, half lion. I won't go into the whole story. Maybe I'll tell it again. But these prayers contain so much wonderful knowledge that we can use. So one of the prayers that he has, it perfectly describes our situation in this world and how to get out of it. And he says, Yasmat priya priya viyoga sayoga janma shokagnina sakalayonisha dayamana dukaushadam tatapi dukam atadhyaham bhuman bhamami vadame tabadasya yogam. Now the word dasya yoga is kind of a synonym for bhakti yoga. It means the yoga of being reinstated in one's position as a servant of God. Dasya means servant. Yoga means linking up. So he describes a situation in the material world, this banyan tree. So he says yasmat. Yasmat means due to, or from what I'm just going to describe, it produces an effect. So the words are priya, apriya, viyoga, sayoga. So it's interesting what these mean. Priya means those things which are dear to us, beginning with the body. And we develop so much attachment to the body, family members, property, prestige, bank account. There's a whole list. And these are things that are dear to us. But one by one, sometimes suddenly, sometimes gradually, these things are taken away from us. They're taken away. Ultimately, the basis of the whole thing is taken away, the body itself. So this is priya viyoga. This is one source of lamentation. Now, even if at the present moment you've got it pretty well together, you have your people who you care about, they care about you, and you have your family. There's the anxiety that it will one day be broken. And so that itself is a kind of misery. And one day it actually happens. So the things that are dear to us are suddenly or gradually taken from us, and the things that are abominable to us are forced upon us. Like COVID-19, like all these fires, like war, like pestilence, like all these different things. Sometimes it comes down like a ton of bricks, sometimes it's just threatening, but this is the nature of it. So this produces shok agnina, a fire of lamentation in this world. Krishna certifies in the 8th chapter that this world is dukkali and mashashvatam. It's not a place where you can try to plan to be happy. That is the root of our whole problem. We've become accustomed to this, we've forgotten all about our spiritual reality, and we're simply mediating everything through matter. But matter is asat. It's here, it exists, and then it doesn't exist, at least not in the same form. Prabhupada, it would compare it in the beginning of the 2nd canto, with this wonderful purport, to the ocean. A very nice analogy, we have familiarity with it. As those waves are always coming. And there's so many bubbles and foam that created and then destroyed. So the foam comes together and meeting. It's just like a couple of bubbles coming together. And when you think about it, our relations here, when you live in this world a while, there's so many people you used to know, some of them very fondly, they may have died or moved away or whatever. They're no longer in your life, and you can remember, I used to care about this person so much, and now what happened? They're gone, and you're transferred to someone else, and this is the tragedy of life on the material plane. So that's what he described. This is called a fire of lamentation, and everyone goes through it, and not just in human life, in subhuman life also. So this is sakata yonishu dayamana. I'm burning in this fire of lamentation, not just in this life, but in also all kinds of species. They also have it, but not as acutely as human beings because we're more conscious. So now we need a remedy for this pain. It's called a duk aushadhi. Aushadhi simply means an herbal remedy, actually. So duk aushadam. And in human life, we can concoct so many things that we cold. Okay, we'll build an apartment. We figured out how to make all kinds of garments. Now we don't have to be cold anymore. We'll build a fire, right? So many things. So duk aushadam. So then he said, but those very aushadams, those remedies, tadapi dukkam, are sources of more misery. Everyone's familiar. Have you ever seen in a magazine where they're trying to sell you some pharmaceutical? Abilify, I think I remember there's a name. You know, you're depressed, and there's a lady, you know, cavorting with her child in an idyllic scene in the field somewhere, you know, plowing. There's no depression. You know, just take this drug. Then you turn the page, and there's 2 pages of side effects. Right? Watch out, your liver may get damaged, you know, and one of the side effects in rare cases is death, but don't worry about it, it's very rare, and go on like that. So then, duk aushadam tadapi dukkam. The very remedy is a source of more misery. On a more down-to-earth level, we know, hopefully second-hand, not first-hand, about people who tried to drown their troubles with alcohol. Very common. And at first it's, oh, this is pretty good, you know, I'm forgetting my problems, I'm feeling pretty cool, you know. But gradually, you know, it damages your body, and damages your brain, and it damages your life, and it can ruin your life. You get addicted to alcohol. So the remedy itself is the source of pain. So that's three, and then the root source of the whole problem, atadhyaham, this little phrase, you know, Sanskrit is so wonderfully concise. The root of the whole problem is, I'm thinking I'm something I'm not. Atadhyaham, I'm thinking I'm this body, which is not me. I am different from the body. I'm pure spirit soul, and I'm identifying with the body, which is temporary and inevitably has to suffer all these miseries. So the last line is the solution. He's speaking to God. He's speaking to Nrsingadev. Bhuman, oh great Lord, Bhuman Brahmami Vadame Tabadasya Yogam. Please instruct this wandering, suffering soul in your Dasya Yoga, in your Bhakti Yoga. Now, why is Bhakti Yoga the solution? Let's go back to our verse. We'll see that we're entangled, and this purport, wonderful purport, Prabhupada describes, that we're entangled in this tree, which is simply all the complications of the material world. And we're wandering from one branch to another. And we are, the problem is we're completely unaware of it. We think this is all there is. Unless we get a source of knowledge that's coming from beyond this banyan tree, then we're going to try to make some adjustment within the tree, within the material elements. And that's what this modern society is, right? All kinds of, like, modern plumbing. I remember reading one article about how indoor plumbing came to London. You know, it was a mess. Let's just say it was a mess. There was no, you know, can you imagine? They had to have the chamber pots, you know, there. So finally, one guy said, "Okay, look, I'm gonna try to see if we can, you know, get the Thames River. We'll use that water and some." And with great effort, they finally built some of that, which was like a big relief. And this was became a standard throughout everywhere. You can imagine how important that is. Where you don't have flowing water, you don't have electricity, life is a whole different thing than what we have here in Pacific Beach, right? So we build all that up, but it's temporary. What it does is it gives you hope and the belief that you can solve the problems on the material platform. But dukkasham tadapi dukkam. Just think of the 100 years or so that we spent with the burning fossil fuels, right? There used to be, everyone went around with horse and buggy, you know, in the early 19th century, right? And gradually they invented the car, you know. Oh, this is great, you know, horseless carriage, you know. Now, build a huge civilization based on that, heating things, you know, building the coal and all these things. But there's a problem with climate change. Too much carbon dioxide. And what does it produce? And just see, we're right in the middle of it now. No, it's not going to be 100 years from now. It's not till the end of no, it's like right now. 120 degrees in Vancouver, which is what it got up to. Totally crazy. People died. They were used to that. This is standard now. Every year the fires get worse. It's the dukkam that comes from trying to solve your problems with on the material plane. So to solve our problem, we have to get out of this tree entirely, meaning we need to get out of the material world and we need to get out of the material body and not take another one. And that's the basic principle of the impetus for all of Vedic culture. And it's called, Prabhupada refers to this, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. These are like 4 standard arthas or goals of life. It begins with Dharma. There has to be a regulated program of activity for elevation and progress. And real Dharma is enunciated by God. Now, the thing is, there's also material Dharma. We find in the Vedas, there's a whole section describing how you can live a very regulated life, perform sacrifices, and so forth, with the hope of going to a different plane of existence, not out of the material world, but to a higher plane of material existence in the heavenly planets. And there you can live for a long, long time and enjoy heavenly delights. But as Krishna describes a few chapters back in the 9th chapter, Tetam bhukva swargalokam vishalam chine punye martyalokam vishanti. You haven't really made any progress out of this banyan tree. You just moved to a much more pleasant branch for a while. And then you fall down again. When your punya is used up, because it's all material, but it's pious because it's different levels, modes of goodness, you know. So okay, so you've got a whole bunch of pious credits, and you can cash them out up in Indraloka, where you can enjoy godly delights for a long, long time, but eventually the credit card no longer, and you have to come back down. Who was telling me? I never heard this before. Was it Bhakti Sundar Swami? No, I think it was Dhruva Karma. Anyway, we had some guests. So, because you live in heaven and there's no old age, there's no death, there's no disease, you know. But at a certain point, you fall down. Oh, Dharma Setu told me this. He read somewhere. I never read this. And so you fall down, you know, and you're falling down with the rain, you know, but your body is being eaten by the Rakshasas as you fall down. So that's kind of a come down from cavorting around in Nandananda the garden, isn't it? This is, and finally you come down here and you take a human birth, you know, and you start up again. In other words, just going, as Krishna says, Gatagatam kama kama labande. Staying on the platform of kama, material desire, you're just going and coming. Going and coming. If you're lucky, you go up to the heavenly planets. What do we know about the heavenly planets? We'll probably go down and then have to come all the way back up to human life. So the solution is to practice that dharma by which you progressively become detached from the material world. And you have to become attached to something, because that's who we are. You become attached to Krishna. You become attached to the spiritual world, which is beyond, which is the real world that's reflected as this banyan tree. And that attachment is wholesome. Just like so many things we see, Krishna consciousness is full of sensual activity. Just look at the deities. You see the beautiful form of the deities. It's so enthralling. You can smell the incense. You can feel the heat of the fire. You certainly taste the prasadam. You can hear the wonderful kirtan. There's so many varieties. And we used to have, in the old days, we had a lot of devotees, plays, kinds of things, you know. In other words, it's not sensory deprivation. It's purification of the senses, of the function of the senses. As it is said, this Prabhupada quoted this verse all the time, Atakshi Krishna namade nabhave grayam indriyai, that by these senses and this mind we cannot directly perceive the spirit. We can perceive only material things. But under the direction of the bona fide Shastra and the bona fide Guru, spiritual teacher, we can use these very senses to connect to Krishna, and they gradually become purified, and eventually the Krishna reveals himself in proportion to our purity. That's the science. In other words, everything that we aspire for, and we hope for, and we figure we got to figure it out on the material plane, it's all a big illusion. It's all a big illusion. As it said right at the beginning of Bhagavatam, whatever dharma you perform, dharmak swanastitung pungsam, vishrakshena katasayak, notpariyed yadiratim, shama evahi kevalam. Whatever dharma you're performing, it could be, you know, your job, whatever it is you call it, your regulated activity. If it doesn't increase your desire to hear about and glorify the Lord, it's completely useless labor. Because you're creating a mentality. Don't forget the science here from the 8th chapter, that the state of mind that you have when you finally leave the body Nobody dies. Don't worry about that. But you do change your situation depending on your consciousness. So the whole thing depends on what we hear, chant, remember, do, all the consciousness that we create in this lifetime. How to do that systematically. You can't just, think you can figure it out yourself. It's already been figured out, the scientific way to do it. And in this age, the great gift from Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself, is this mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra. Krishna, the word Krishna, the name Krishna, is non-different from Krishna himself. Meaning that if we simply try to absorb the mind in that sound, that we are getting out of this tree. We're cutting branches, it's helping us to develop an attachment to Krishna and a detachment from these material things. And so if we can do it in this one life, become completely attached to hearing about Krishna, serving Krishna, meditating, and it's a full life. You're not losing anything. There's music, there's dance, there's everything beautiful and wholesome. It's the most healthy thing for the soul. Then we can actually cut the root of this tree, and that'll come up in a couple of verses. That we have to cut it with the sword of detachment. But how do you get that sword of detachment? That's through bhakti yoga. Vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yoga prayojitaha. Janayat yashu vairagyam jnanam cha yadahoitakam. That key word vairagya. Vairagya means detachment. All the things we're attached to, that attachment has to be transferred to Krishna. So by practicing bhakti yoga to Vasudeva, is another name for Krishna, then one quickly generates knowledge and detachment. I always like to give this example of how knowledge breeds detachment. And forgive me, but many of you haven't heard this before. So there's one wonderful devotee living in the community here. He actually joined in 1966 at the 26th 2nd Avenue. You know Madhusudan and his wife? I don't know if you met them, Kanchan Bala. Wonderful devotees. They've been here for years. And so on Vyasa Puja Day, which we just had recently, Madhusudan, he's perfected the art of making sweet rice with milk and rice and sugar and a certain way of making it, and you cool it, and it comes out just right. So when the feast comes to that stage where we're ready to have some dessert with sweet rice and other things, then it has to be cool, so it has to go into the walk-in for a certain amount of hours. It's all been done, prepared very nicely. It didn't happen this year like this. This is just it's an analogy, an allegory. So, pre-COVID, forget COVID. Everybody's lined up, tightly. There's no masks. And we have 4 or 5 lines here, and we have buckets for everyone, and everyone's ready to serve out the sweet rice. Everyone's anticipating. This year he made strawberry sweet rice, especially. Wow, I can't wait. So just at the point when everyone's getting ready to start serving out, Madhusudan himself runs out from the kitchen. He says, "Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. Oh, I put salt in instead of sugar." Oh. So right away, everyone's desire for the sweet rice is gone. The knowledge that it's spoiled means we're going to miss it out. You see? So knowledge gives detachment. So when you understand that one verse, some of these verses in the Bhagavad Gita, they just always stick out with me. In the 5th chapter, Krishna says, "Yehi sangs bharjija bhoga dukkha yonai evate adyantabantang kote anateshu ramete buddha." He's saying there, you're not mincing any words. There's no mincing words with Krishna here. There's no time. They're on the battlefield. So he says, the enjoyment that you experience from the senses contacting their sense objects. We have these 5 senses. They all have their objects, and the mind also, So there's some enjoyment there. There's no doubt about it. But that enjoyment has a beginning and an end, as we all know. And it's the source of your suffering. Samsparjita bhoga dukkha yoni. It's the source of dukkha. And the wise do not take their pleasure there. All right, so where do they take their pleasure? We're pleasure seeking. We're definitely not at the point of no. You have to give up all thoughts of pleasure, and then you can become self-realized. that doesn't work, and it's not possible, not necessary. So that's explained in the previous verse. Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma vindadyatmane yat sukham sab brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. That the wise, they don't take their pleasure in the external sensations here. Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma, not attracted. Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma vindadyatmane yat sukham sab brahma yoga yuktatma. They are enjoying the pleasure within by contacting Brahman, spirit, pure spirit. Sab Brahma Yogi Sukham Akshayam Ashnute. And in this way, they enjoy unbroken happiness. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. Now, elsewhere Krishna explains, and the Bhagavad Gita explains, that Brahman is the supreme Brahman, as we're going to learn here. That's Krishna. That if you learn how to enjoy bhakti rasa, it may not be completely perfect, but it's the beginning of it. Then that supplants and eclipses your very desire to enjoy material happiness. You see it for what it is. It's a trap. This is her thankless task, to try to fool us and con us into thinking we can enjoy with this material energy. And life after life, we suffer. So, but she's also Krishna's servant. So when we start serving Krishna, she releases her grip on us. Meaning that, those things I used to enjoy, now I can't even think of it. It's just not it's not like we have to grit our teeth and say, no, I'm not going to enjoy. It's no longer even attractive. It's the opposite of drug addiction. It's healthy addiction. There's no bad side effects. And the more you do it, the more wholesome you become and the more healthy you become. That's why we have a certain minimum of chanting the rounds and so forth. Because at first we're so conditioned that the mind keeps wandering or falling asleep or moving away. But it's possible to do, just like we build up muscles. I believe it or not, I used to be into lifting weights. Look at me now. I was 13, 14 one time, Didn't know anything about Krishna. So, some austerity. What does it say? No pain, no gain, right? So it's there. There has to be some austerity. We're coming up on Rishabdev's teachings. We're in chapter 4 and chapter 5 in the 5th canto. Very important teachings. He's about to retire. He's got his 100 sons, very exalted. One of whom is Bharat. Then his 9 Yogendras are there. Great sages. They immediately took sannyas and they go around and teach Bhagavatam. So it's a very exalted gathering, and it's not just his sons, so many others come. So he's giving these teachings. What does he say at first? Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke kashtan kaman arate vidbujange tapo divyam putrakai in a sattvam shuddye jasma brahma saukyam tvanantam. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for harish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. I didn't get all of the ideas in that. What he's saying is you have to take on some austerity for that bhakti yoga. Tapo divyam putraka, and that you purify your whole existence. And then you can gradually become eligible and taste this endless happiness of bhakti. So that's the promise of human life, and it's universal. Rishabdev was, I think, a different yuga. I mean, he's like way back thousands and thousands of years ago. And this will be true now, and it'll be true in 10 million years. It's just the nature of the way things are. So this analogy of the banyan tree is very cogent, and we'll pursue it. All right, any questions or comments? I'm trying to...
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol Vijay.
May I?
Go ahead.
Prabhu, the quote from the purport is...
It's a long purport. Where is it in the purport?
Text 1. The text.
Yes, I know it's text 1, but where in the purport? Is it paragraphs 2, 3, 4, or 5?
Paragraph 1, the second sentence.
Of the whole purport?
No, quote, the second sentence of the first paragraph.
All right, that's an
quote,
easy. It is explained.
It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna, end quote.
Okay.
So, in accordance with this simple quote, my question is, what is the gain for me if I go for understanding Krishna And what is the loss for me if I refuse to understand Krishna?
That's what we call in America a softball question. All right.
Please explain. Softball?
In other words,
What is the
it's a big
meaning?
fat pitch that you can easily hit for a home run. Anyway, let me answer. I'm not going to explain baseball.
Okay,
He's sitting in
okay.
Portugal, by the way. So anyway, okay, what's the gain? First of all, the quote is coming up. The most famous verse in this chapter is 15:15, where Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham mridisannivishto mattak smrtir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvarahameva vejo vedanta quid veda vedeva chaham. I'm sitting in everyone's heart as the super soul, and from me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be understood. The goal of all the Vedic knowledge. That's what Prabhupada is citing here. Ahame Vedanta quid Veda Vedeva cham. I'm the writer of the Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. So the point is that the Vedas are meant to help us. Krishna spoke them originally to Brahma and imparted them in his heart because he wants us to get out of this material world. We don't want to get out of this material. We've completely forgot there is anything else. But he's our Father. That was explained at the beginning of the last chapter. He is our eternal Father, and he explains at the end of 5th chapter, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. I'm the best well-wisher of every living entity. Isn't it nice to know that the most powerful person in existence is our unconditional friend? He has nothing to gain from us. He's completely full in himself. But he still cares that we're suffering in this world, so he's making a plan to try to get us out. So, that the purpose of the Vedic study is to understand Krishna. So when you say understand Krishna, it means we also have to understand ourselves and our relationship to Krishna and our activity by which we can realize that relationship, live in that relationship, and return to our original state in the spiritual world. So the Vedas, especially the Vedas that we have, the essence of the Vedas, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and as given to us by realized souls like Srila Prabhupada, is teaching us how to understand Krishna. And the books are just filled with them, filled with ideas and information about who Krishna is. And so the benefit is that we become attached, and we learn that by service to Krishna, thinking of Krishna, the 9 processes of hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., that we'll regain our original healthy state. You learn that we're in a disease condition here. Material life. This material body itself is a disease. Now we want to try to keep it healthy as possible. For what? Not to enjoy separately, but to use it as a tool for serving Krishna. It's very suited to that. But eventually we want to give it up entirely. So that's part of understanding Krishna. Recently I gave a little talk on the Dasha Mula. I think I've explained that here. These are 10 roots of the philosophy. And they're divided into 3 sections. Sambandha Abhideya Prayojanam. Sambandha means understanding the relationship between the source of everything, God, and ourselves, and this world. There are intricate relationships. That includes understanding the different energies of God and so forth. And then it culminates, that's Sambandha Gyan, understanding who is God and who we are, and then that everything is simultaneously one with God and different from God. And then there's the process by which this can become realized knowledge rather than just theoretical knowledge. And that's called sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti, the practice of devotional life. Just like if you go to one of innumerable, I'm sure in this city alone there's probably 50 yoga studios, right? So why do you want to go to yoga? Because my friend went to yoga and she's looking really slim and very effulgent these days. And I'm still kind of, feeling unhealthy. So I'm going to go. So you have an attraction to go. And if you go and you do the step, you do the bending and the stretching and gradually and do some diet and things, you start to feel better. It's realized knowledge. There's only so far you can take that, but it's an analogy. So similarly, when you associate with devotees and you're attracted by their activities, their personality, what they are emanating, and the books, then you want to take up the process because it sounds like what I need to do. And so that's part of also understanding Krishna. The purpose of it to understand Krishna, because Krishna includes everything. It's Krishna himself and his words and his teachings. That's all Krishna. And the benefit is that one regains his original nature. What is mukti? Mukti is highly touted in the Vedic culture. Mukti is liberation from this birth and death. But the full definition is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Muktir hidvanyata rupam swarupena vibhastiti. So, very illuminating, half a verse. That real mukti means to give up our entanglement with all these other forms that we have. Even in this one body, we experience so many different forms, right? Childhood and adolescence, middle age, old age, right? And eventually we lose that and start another body. So these are all not us. The very bodies we experience in this one lifetime, what to speak of all the others that we've been through throughout our life in the material world. So to give up all those bodies, not take any new ones, and to be situated in one's swarup. Very important word. Swarup means one's original, natural, spiritual form. And that's just suitable for serving Krishna, reciprocating loving exchanges with Krishna. We don't know what that is right now, but we can discover it by the process of bhakti. So that's all part of Vedic study, the way Prabhupada defines it. So you can see how important it is. That the purpose of the Vedic study is to understand Krishna, and therefore Prabhupada called this Krishna consciousness, this process Krishna consciousness. And when we fully develop that, then everything becomes revealed. It's all by revelation. We can't figure it out on our own by material process. But when we engage in this process, Krishna in the heart, he sees that we're sincere and gradually reveals more and more. So that's the best I can do with that one, Vijay.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu. What about the loss? If I do not want to understand Krishna, what is it that I lose?
Well, that's what I explained. Then you stay. You have to stay in this material world, and you lose everything. Every time you die, mityu sarvaharaschaham. You can't get anything permanently here. It's just one misery after another. Your hope against hope. I can achieve this. I can enjoy this. But time takes it all away, and eventually everything is lost, and you have to go on to another situation and start all over again. So what it is simply postponing your return to Godhead. It's like a prisoner is offered a way out of prison. He says, "No, I think I'll hang around for another 50 years. Thank you." It's insane. But that's exactly what we're doing. We're postponing our liberation and our return to Godhead for eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So that's what you lose. You don't lose permanently because you don't die, but you postpone it unbearably. And who knows what life you'll have in your next life. So we should strike there's this phrase, strike while the iron is hot. Take advantage. Turnam is one. Turnam yateta nabateta namityava. I'll end with this because it's getting late. So this is a verse you've heard me cite before, but it's very apropos. Labdva sudurlam abidam bahu sambhavante manushyam artadam anityam apia dira turnam yateta napateta namrityavad nikshe yasaya vishayakala sarvataksya. So this verse Krishna speaks in the 11th canto, and he says, "My dear friend, you have attained this very rare human form of life after many, many births, coming up through different species. Human life. And it's unique in that artadam, it can give you the goal, the final goal of existence. By cats and dogs, you can't understand anything. But like all forms, it's temporary, so time is wasting. So one has to be very thoughtful, dhira, and understand things as they are. And then, without wasting time, turna means immediately, yateta, strive. Turnam yateta napateta, as long as you haven't fallen down and died yet. Anumritya yavat. Anumritya means death is always following you. So don't waste time. And they say, strive for what? Nikshayasaya. This is exactly what we've been talking about. Liberation from this material life of birth, old age, disease, and death, and return back to Godhead, to our eternal life of bliss and knowledge. That's the ultimate good. Can't be had here. Because after all, in all these other forms of life you've been through, you've enjoyed, or quote, enjoyed all kinds of sense gratifications. And what has it gotten you? Another birth and another death. Is it? So don't waste any time and take up bhakti yoga. And we have 2 minutes.
Dravida Prabhu, if I may, spectacular answer to my question.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's the first time
Hare
I got this
Krishna.
spectacular. I always get wonderful.
Yes, it was the first time.
Okay, wait, we have a local question, Dharavani. Where's that
Okay, no
mic?
problem. Okay,
Mic.
thank you.
Oh, we didn't do the mics. We're lax. But Dimitri, he's on the run.
Thank you.
Hare
Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol. The fourth paragraph, where in the middle it starts with, in other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the tree of the spiritual world.
Right.
The reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as the tree's reflection is situated on water.
Uh-huh.
Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. I understood that from your talk. My one specific question is about desire, specifically in that part. So can you just elaborate on desires? How does that relate to the materialistic tree and cutting it away or whatnot?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And that's going to come up at the on the text number 3, this asanga shastrena, with the weapon of detachment. We're kind of running out of time, but I'll try quickly. So originally, we are in a relationship of love with Krishna. It's called prema. And that prema is selfless desire to please the other, to please Krishna. If you try to think about it, that's what real love is. You know, the mother and the child. If the child is healthy and warm and well fed, the mother is happy. It's not that, well, what do you have to show me? What am I getting from all this? No. If the kid is happy, then the mother's happy. This is the closest thing we have to pure selfless love, you know. And that's the kind of selfless love that we are meant to express to Krishna. And the reciprocation is wonderful. It's ecstatic because we're feeling the love coming back from Krishna. So we have chosen on our own free will to turn away from Krishna and put our attention on this material world and try to be the supreme enjoyers rather than giving enjoyment to Krishna, where we really enjoy. And so it's all based on desire. Instead of prema, we've got ourselves entangled in all these varieties of kama, which is material desire headed by sex desire, but includes all material desires. So that desire needs to be purified by the process of bhakti. It means that under discipline, because we're human beings, we can say no. I want to take a drink now. No, that's prohibited. I'm not going to take a drink. I'm going to go chant Hare Krishna, and then I'll drink some sweet rice offered to Krishna. In other words, the senses are still working, but you're diverting it to Krishna. And because Krishna is the very name means all attractive, that naturally our desire is purified, especially when we seriously chant Hare Krishna. So the whole thing is based on desire. When you think about it, everyone here, somehow or other, desire to come to class tonight. All auspicious. Out of all 5 million people in San Diego, and a few online, I'm not forgetting you, you did a very fortunate thing. And there's many devotees, relatively speaking, a few hundred, but there's millions whose desire is wrapped up in something else. They took a few more steps, now they're at the bar down the street there. They're having a whole different experience. So everything is desire, and our whole, how shall I say it, accumulation of desires at the time of death, that causes us to have a certain set of consciousness, and that will form our destination. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sorry, no time for poem tonight. Next Monday. So we'll have a nice kirtan now, and see the beautiful forms of their lordships. And then, hopefully, there'll be a little prasadam. Whoops.